Welcome to Reddit Aliens. Night shift workers, what's the creepiest thing that's happened? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. I was working in a 35-story high-rise. I was returning some computer tapes like I did nightly. I was exhausted and could barely stay awake. As I approached the elevator, I noticed the door was open. I was happy that I didn't need to wait and started walking faster until I realized there was no elevator car present and it was a 10-story drop. Used to clean a church alone late at night. There was a piano upstairs which I thought was broken, which was why it was upstairs in the attic. One night, I started hearing piano music from the attic. I immediately assumed someone was up there pranking me, so I went up and there was no one. When I turned around to walk away after realizing no one was there, I heard a loud bang behind this metal door, which I assume was an attic closet. Never worked the night shift again. Asked the one other person that worked night shift. She confirmed weird shit happening was normal. This happened when I worked in a hotel right out of high school. I did overnight in the laundry room, but I would help the front desk run invoices to the room sometimes. I was on the 3rd floor at like 2 a.m. I think, when I bent down to slide the invoice under the door and a pen flew past my face and hit the door. I didn't keep pens on me and I checked around the hallway but it was silent. You know hotel doors? They're heavy and you can hear people open and close them. I am 100% positive I heard nothing. When I got downstairs, I asked my coworker if they saw anything, but they said they weren't paying attention to the security screen. Really freaked me out. That was the only thing that happened in the 8 months I was there. I was working at a middle school as a night shift custodian. I cleaned a long U-shaped wing full of classrooms every night. I'd already locked up one set of doors to the wing and was about to lock the ones at the other end of the U. I made the full lap around the wing, and I'd been cleaning there all night alone and came to the end of the hallway where the doors to the rest of the school were. When I shut the lights off, the dark silhouette of what looked like a child ran from across the end of the hallway from left to right. There were doors down there, but I'd just locked them all up and no one was around. I was so creeped out, I locked the doors connecting the wing to the rest of the school and ran to my car. I always felt like I was seeing things out of the corner of my eye working there at night, but that was the most visible, for sure thing I saw at that place. Oh man, I worked as a night shift manager at a 24/7 gas station fast food place in a sketchy part of town. I have hundreds of stories about the wild shenanigans of crackheads. Most aren't creepy, but more, what the F just happened? Like the guy who gave me a magic crystal to protect me from the apocalypse because I covered the change he needed for some hot dogs. Or the other guy who tried to buy his cigarettes with lawn clippings, stating, "I know it ain't weed, but it works almost just as good," before just conking out standing at my register. I'm going to go with the creepiest being discovering dead bodies the first time. 2 regulars OD'd while hiding in my dumpster area. I called 911 and did what little first aid I knew, but the EMT said they'd likely been dead for hours, judging by how cold they were. But I swear to God, I thought I could feel a pulse, and I clearly remember hearing a gurgling noise. How would you feel about being around an exhibit like this in the middle of the night? Used to be executive director of a family science museum. We once hosted a human cadaver type exhibit similar to Body Worlds. 3 times during the exhibit run in the middle of the night, the alarm company calls me to say motion sensors are going off in that exact exhibit hall, but no exterior window or door sensors are tripped. 3 times I had to get out of bed, drive to the museum, and walk the exhibit floor amongst the posed cadavers and specimens with a flashlight to confirm all was well. Never found anything amiss. I worked nights driving a taxi cab, and occasionally I'd post up someplace and take a nap waiting for a job. Was waiting at a hospital since you get good jobs sometimes. The hospital would give patient vouchers to go to another hospital or shelter. I woke up and someone was sitting in the back. Seems I'd forgotten to lock the doors. They admitted they'd been sitting for a few seconds but didn't know what to do since I was napping. We had a laugh and I made $75 off that ride. Better believe I started locking my doors after that though. I switched to night shifts at the start of the pandemic because there was a lot of overtime available. I'm a psychiatric nurse. I was called to cover another nurse at a very low maintenance place, an independent living facility. Most of the people there didn't have major issues, and were over 50, so they're usually asleep all night. Easy money. At 11 p.m. I was doing paperwork with an eye on the CCTV when a tall man in all black came across the monitor. He was very tall but had his head down. I asked him what he needs, and he told me he was convinced he wasn't safe and needed to go to an inpatient psych ward to escape the people who were after him. The next 2 hours I was on the phone trying to find out if anywhere would take him, but there were no beds. He was coherent and basically didn't pose enough of an urgent situation to warrant being sectioned. He saw that as the hospital not caring about his suffering and not believing he was genuinely ill. He hinted that I was colluding with them to get him killed. Then he turned his head slowly to look me in the eye and said if the threat to his own life wasn't considered an emergency, I bet they'd care if I stabbed someone else. I used to work at a bowling alley, me too. I had finished closing and I had just turned off all the lights and was about to leave. Suddenly, one of the lanes turns on. The only way they turn on is a switch in the back, so I turned on the lane lights and started walking back to turn it off. I was just about to go behind the lanes past the curtain when it shut off again. We didn't have cameras there, but I really wish we did because my boss didn't believe me. I work in a prison. When I was new, I was working overtime one night in a housing unit that has seen a lot of death. It was well after midnight, and all of the offenders were supposed to be in their cells. Since this was a medium security prison, the offenders still had access to leave the cell to use the communal bathroom at night. Well, I was going in for the 2 a.m. count. I watched an offender walk down the stairs from the second level and into the bathroom. I stood at the entrance to the bathroom and yelled in to ask them what cell they were in so I can add an extra body to that cell for my count, but got no answer. I then walked into the bathroom and searched everywhere but found absolutely nobody. I told one of my coworkers about what happened, and the first thing they asked me was he tall and skinny with long dreads? And he had been. When I answered yes, I was told that's Mr. Bones. He killed himself a few years ago, but he still hangs around. I still get goosebumps thinking about it. 2 years ago, when I was 16, I had a job as a janitor at a Chuck E. Cheese, and I would usually work at night cleaning up messes in the floor and cleaning tables for the next day. So one night, I was just doing my usual business and getting ready to lock up the place. I hear a loud bang coming from one of the rooms. Now I was spooked out because there was only 2 of us working the night cleaning, and my partner Noah was next to me questioning where that sound came from. We kept doing our duties until like 10 to 15 minutes later, we hear scratching coming from the same exact room. Me and Noah were freaked out at this point. We were basically done with cleaning and vacuuming, and we sprinted out the front door. The next day, it turns out that the vents were being twitchy, scratching, and the loud bangs remained unknown. These events kept happening for 3 days, and no one gave me a clue for the loud banging. I used to work out in the Texas desert in the Midland, technically goldsmith, but anyway, I worked out in a warehouse where we shipped drilling motors and collars and other drilling accessories to rigs. Usually it was me and one other dude. Just to set the science, it's 1.5 miles down a desert road to get the warehouse that's pretty dimly lit, and we'd get there at about 7 in the evening. I'd gotten there around 7 and did the usual, paint the received tools, inventory, then go play Xbox till a night truck would come and either load or unload it. Other dude, James, we'll call him, was late all the time, but he was the boss and I didn't really mind the peace and quiet, but never later than 8. So around 9:45, when he didn't show up, I tried to call him. He'd gotten drunk and said he'd be in when he felt like it, so I just kept playing Xbox. About 2 a.m. rolls around, and I hear one of the side doors open and assumed it was either James or a driver, but it was a side door that was all the way at the end of the warehouse. I looked out the office window and there was a dude who was not James and not a driver I recognized. I asked from across the way if he was a driver and homie didn't say a thing, so I assumed it was someone messing with me. Dude looks at me and deadass says, "Do you believe in Jesus, our Lord and Savior?" The only thing I could think of was I guess I'm about to meet him. Thankfully this dude was harmless and just wanted $20. Told me about his heroin struggles and said that he needed $20 for the bus. I think about that night all the freaking time, because it could have easily been my last. He could have dumped me in the desert, and it would have taken days for me to be found. I know this because it happens all the time. Thankfully, I've gotten away from the absolute worst part of Texas and have a much safer job. If you made a discovery like this, how would you react? I worked for a moving company restocking the trucks based on supplies they would need that morning. It's a shitty job. Never work for a moving company. Do not do it. Anyways, I'm stocking a truck pulled up to the dock when I realize my vision is getting fuzzy. I'm tired. I rub my eyes. My forearm feels wet, but I figure it's sweat and my vision clears. It happens again. I rub my eyes and my forearm feels wet again. I look at my arm finally to see hundreds of crushed baby spiders. My vision wasn't fuzzy. Baby spiders were crawling on my eyelashes. I was covered in baby spiders. I ran to the nearest water hose and got everything off. The next morning, I had lots of tiny bites on my legs, but otherwise nothing else. Not really scary, or even a story, but I used to work in clothes store and occasionally had to help overnight to merchandise, etc. There would only be a few of us for a pretty big store, and you'd occasionally be sent into the stockroom, a pretty big room with lots of dark aisles, very quiet and far from the shop floor. It was lit with motion-activated lights and had no windows, so every now and again, if you were there too long, the lights would turn off and you'd be in pitch black until you can find your way to the entrance door, wave your hands around, and get the lights back on. One time, the lights turned back on and I didn't hear a door open, and I wasn't anywhere near the sensor. Nope, didn't like that one bit. I work in water treatment, and one of our smaller plants is a bit isolated and run by a single operator. It gets densely foggy, and once I was near the door and two coyotes came out of the fog and stared through the glass and scared the shit out of me. The MCC hums and chatters, so it sounds like people are talking at night. I once noticed out of the corner of my eye that the floor was moving, and I realized the plant had been invaded by small frogs. Related note, frogs make a gross popping noise if you accidentally step on them. I went out to the chem feed room and found a wolf spider eating a frog. In winter, fog rises up off the basins and is just creepy.
Nothing can stop a good boy from being a good boy. Nothing.
I used to work at an overnight vet clinic, and late one night we didn't have any patients in the clinic, and myself and my coworker were cleaning, and we kept thinking we heard a bark, but that's not uncommon in the village. But it was like 3 a.m., and then out of the corner of my eye, I saw a big golden run down the hallway and then vanish. And I look at my coworker, who was sheet white. We had euthanized a large golden that same night, and the dog was running toward the room that has the freezer in it. Happened again the next night. Oddly enough, the next night the owners called back and asked for more paw prints, and they wanted the collar they had forgotten to take off. I'm convinced the dog was sticking around for them. My coworker was terrified. Not I, but a friend of mine worked at a water treatment plant on graveyard shift. From what I understand, he was there to check levels, adjust stuff, make sure nothing blew up, just him. Access doors are unlocked, but he's inside an 8-foot-tall locked barbed wire fence. This place is next to a highway connecting two cities an hour away from each other, with not much in between. At 2:30 to 3 a.m., he's killing time playing his Nintendo DS when he hears a voice from behind him go, "Get on the ground." My friend goes cold, complies. He's held at gunpoint. This guy ties him up with duct tape, all while saying he's sorry he had to do this, and steals the keys to his truck, his wallet, cards, etc. He hears him drive off, waits a while longer, and finally calls the police. The guy was arrested later that day. Turns out he'd escaped from inmate custody in the next town over, and he was desperate. He'd probably been walking forever. My friend honestly had PTSD of sorts from it for a while. Still works there though. I was working as campus security, and I had to close down the main law school building. The building was downtown in a major city and was old enough that the tunnels underneath it were used in the Underground Railroad. Think dirt floors and wooden crossbeams like you would imagine a mine. There was work going on in the tunnels, not sure what it was, but I think they were reinforcing the supports. Anyway, as part of my routine, I had to go around and check to make sure the build was vacant. I climb down the ladder into the tunnels, all the contractor lights are off. I say a few, "Hello, anyone there?" and shine my flashlight around, silence for a moment. Then I hear what sounds like a radio tune from the 1920s coming from the tunnel. I immediately climb the ladder and padlock the trapdoor, arm the motion sensors, and leave. F that. I was alone in an area doing security. I had to avoid our exhibit area and the back line hallway because it was always sounding like there were high heels following you, probably the HVAC. One of our elevators randomly opened almost every time I walked by. It was towards the end of my route when doing my hourly walk around the building, so it freaked me out enough I only went upstairs if I had to. I had some lighting work to do, so I was about 40 feet in the air when something caught the corner of my eye. I look over at our balcony area that only has one way in and out, and next to one of the seats, I swear I saw someone crouched down staring at me. One of my coworkers had been known to tell ghost stories about the place, so I was sure it was him. For the next hour, I kept seeing the person moving around and hiding in different areas of the balcony, and I swear I heard stifled laughter. I had shouted that I could see them and that I knew who it was. So this time, when I did my hourly lap, I did the building as though and quietly as I could. What had previously taken 15 minutes tops was now taking me 2 hours. I started with that damn balcony. I even booby-trapped the elevator so I could hear someone trying to get by and snuck up the fire escape. There is no possible way someone was up there and I didn't cross paths with them. To this day, I swear he was there to mess with my head, but can't figure out how he got past me to leave the balcony.